Good evening. Welcome everybody. A special welcome to Nitzan Nuriel, who is going to be our lecturer today. I'm Hannah Luden, Director of CIDI, Center for Information and Documentation Israel, and this is one of many lectures we have offered you in the past weeks, and we're still offering during this very strange Corona time. Tonight's lecture will be held by Nitzan Nuriel, who has been connected to CIDI through different tours we have done to Israel, which he talked to people we visited. But Nitzan has been a brigade general in the Israeli army, and he's now a reservist and has done a few very interesting things afterwards. We have sent you information about his CV, but I will only mention two things as Nitzan asked me to do. And this is besides having had many commanding posts in the Israeli army. He has been the terrorist, the head of the Department of Fighting Terrorism at the office of the Israeli Prime Minister, and that was in the years 2007 to 2012. And since then, he's been a fellow at the Institute for Center of Research of Terrorism at the Herzliya Center of Research. Nitzan is going to talk to us today about Israel's northern border, which is a very long border, bordering both Lebanon and Syria. And there is quite many different issues to discuss, which I hope Nitzan will mention. This period is special because it's been 20 years since Israel withdrew from Lebanon. And of course, there were things happening before that, during the withdrawal, lots of agreements and lots of things that have been decided and not very well kept, and lots of things which have happened in the last 20 years. Nitzan, thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us. Nitzan will talk for about 30-35 minutes. In that time, you can use the Q&A button below to pose questions, which we will pose Nitzan after his talk. Nitzan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Very happy to speak with you, even though I would prefer that you will be able to come to Israel and we'll be able to travel together along the border and to see things by ourselves. Just a moment of history. 20 years ago, I commanded the Israeli operation to withdraw from Lebanon. So when we are speaking about the Israeli-Lebanese relationship, it's part of my career. More than 30 years. I started as a simple soldier in the Litani operation back in '78. And as the J3 of the Northern Command, I plan and command the withdrawal operation. So I have many, many memories regarding Lebanon, and we'll speak about what is Lebanon today and what are the challenges we have. Beside that piece of history, I will open the scope a bit and touch some other Israeli security challenges we have along our borders. I will do it in a very brief way. Please ask whatever you want. And before starting our journey, I need to say something as a background. You need to remember that in Israel, there's no even one issue stand by himself. So if you really want to understand something, we need to dig in and to deep into the details, because everything connected to everything. You cannot find even one issue, one state, one player in our region that is not connected into another 5 or 6 players, sometimes with totally different agenda, which make the story much more complicated. And yet, it's not enough to speak about the complexity. We need to try to understand it. So for the first 2 minutes, I would like to speak about Egypt and Jordan. Egypt, at that stage, realized that Israel and Egypt has many common interests. So we're living in a period which the overall security cooperation between Israel and Egypt is better than ever. We need to split between politics and security. When it comes into the politics, we need to speak about leaders, we need to speak about some other element, but when it comes into security at that stage, Egypt and Israel are sharing more than ever. Regarding Jordan, we also have peace treaty with Jordan, and yet at that stage, the overall cooperation between Israel and Jordan is a bit problematic. It goes into the political side, which I'm trying to avoid, but I need to mention it because it's come from the Trump deal, the deal of the century, and as part of it, Israel thinks to annex the Jordan Valley, and the Jordanian regime totally against it. So we are living in a period which, on one hand, the security cooperation is very good. On the other hand, the talking among leaders, it's almost zero. And we need to see what will be in the next few weeks, the Israeli decisions as well as the Jordanian response. But if you want to, if you have time to put some attention into what's going between Israel and Jordan regarding that issue, within the few coming weeks, we will see what will be the outcome of those decisions. Syria and Lebanon. The reason I put them together is because we, Israel, see those borders as the northern front. And in a minute, I will speak about Lebanon, about Syria, and I cannot ignore the Iranian connection into that picture. If you really want to understand what's going in the Middle East, you need to understand Iran. Without understanding the Iranian vision, without understanding the Iranian plans, it will be very difficult to understand what they do, why they do it, and why it's so problematic for us. So for a moment, I would like to open the scope regarding Iran, and it will help you to understand what's going in Lebanon and what's going in Syria, and as outcome from that, what should be or what are the Israelis' policies toward those issues. Let's go back to 1979. Before 79, you couldn't find even one Shiite state in the Middle East. The Middle East was divided between Sunni states or secular states. Iran became the first Shiite state. 79. What was the first Iranian decisions as the first Iranian Shiite state? Number one, go to a war with Iraq, beginning of the 80s. And secondly, they asked themselves who should be the second Shiite state. Now we need to understand the Iranian vision is to control the Sunni state in the Middle East. This is a religious conflict. Very limited connection into the Judaism, very limited connection into the Christianity. This is a conflict among the Muslims regarding the questions who is going to control the Muslim world, the Sunnis or the Shiites. Historically, for many, many years, the Sunnis control the Muslim world. When Iran was established as the first Shiite state, their vision is to change it. How do they do it? Because today, 2020, 4.5 states in the Middle East controlled by Iran, meaning the Sunnis lost 4.5 states. They lost Lebanon, they lost Syria, they lost Iraq, and they lost half of Yemen. And obviously, Iran. How do they do it? Iran has a concept. We need to understand that concept, and by that we can understand what they are doing on a daily basis in the last almost 4 years. The Iranian concept is the following. If we can control the strongest military power, we can control the state. So let's see, how do they do it? Let's go back to the 80s. The Iranian decision was that the state of Lebanon can become the second Shiite state. Why? They were looking for three preconditions: weak regime, civil war, and some Shiite communities that will be able to carry out the revolution. That was the case of Lebanon in the beginning of the 80s. The regime was weak, like always, just after the civil war, and 30% of the Lebanese at that time were Shiite people. So what is the next stage? To establish the strongest military power. Who are they? Hezbollah. Now listen to that. Israel was an excuse. Hezbollah was the tool to control Lebanon. Iran established Hezbollah in order to fight against the Israelis, because at that time we controlled part of Lebanon. But the real reason to establish Hezbollah was to control Lebanon. How do we know that? Israel left Lebanon in May 2000, 20 years ago. So who needs Hezbollah? Why the state of Lebanon needs Hezbollah? Who is the only one who gained from the Hezbollah existence? Iran. I can share with you that Hezbollah is the successful Iranian project. And this is the key stone in the Iranian vision, in the Iranian tools, how to control the Sunni state in the Middle East. If you understand the Iranian vision and the Iranian way how to conduct it, you can understand why Iran tried very hard to have Shiite militias in Syria. Why do they have the same in Iraq? Why do they support the Houthis in Yemen? Based on the same concept. If we, the Iranians, if we have the strongest military power, then we can control those states. That's the way they control Lebanon. That's the way they control Syria. That's the way they control Iraq. That's the way they control Yemen. And if we understand that concept, we can start raising questions. A, who is next on line? What are the Saudis should do? Because if they do understand the picture, it's well known that the Iranian main target is the Saudis, because the Saudis are the biggest, the largest Sunni state in the Middle East. Raising those questions will help us to understand the policies among all the players: Turkey, Russia, Chinese, the Saudis, the Americans, and last but not least, the Israelis. Let's make it clear. Israel cannot shape the Middle East. We are not big enough. And yet we have our own interests, we have our own risks, and we need to be able to understand the picture, and we need to be able to launch policies that will support the Israeli needs. Just three small anecdotes that will again help you to understand the full picture. When the Americans, few months ago, decided to take Soleimani, the head of the Al-Quds force from Iran, out of the game, was not because what he did in Lebanon or what he tried to do in Syria. It's because what he tried to do in Iraq. Because from the American perspective, Iraq is still a place which they believe that they can shape. And from the American policy, from the American perspective, Iraq should be the main state that should confront Iran. From the Turkish point of view, the reason they are trying to shape Syria differently is not because the Shiite or the Sunnis, it's because of the Kurds. From the Turkish point of view, the big threat on the Turkish stability is the option that the Kurds will get their own autonomy in Syria. So look the complexity of the picture. Turkey, which is part of NATO, are fighting in Syria against the Kurds who are supported by NATO. And this is only one angle of the complexity. What Israel can do, what is the Israeli policy? Let's try to put it together, Lebanon and Syria. From the Israeli perspective, Hezbollah is #1 in our list, by far than anybody else. Hezbollah has today more than 150,000 rockets that cover all the state of Israel. It just built up commando forces that will be able to attack and occupy the northern part of Israel. If you remember, 2 years ago, we launched an operation in order to detect and destroy all the Hezbollah underground tunnels from the Lebanese border through the state of Israel. It was part of that concept. Hezbollah believed that they can sneak those commando battalions into Israel under the ground, surprise us, and by that capture the villages along the border, create huge number of casualties, raise the Hezbollah flag, take few pictures, and create the victory picture. From the Israeli perspective, as I said, Hezbollah is #1 in our list. And if you ask me, a military clash between Israel and Hezbollah, it's only a question of time. And I'm not speaking about years. Let's face it, if they provide us a good excuse, we'll take it. If Hezbollah make a mistake and do something against Israel, either in the Lebanese border or in the Syrian border, or even overseas against Israeli communities, we will take that opportunity and launch an operation that by the end of that operation, Hezbollah will not exist as a military player. As simple as it is. So in meantime, what we are doing, we prepare ourselves to that military clash. This is the main military training objective, and this is the main intelligence overall collection efforts to be prepared for that day. Regarding Syria, it's a bit more complicated. If you understand the Iranian approach, Iran is about to stay in Syria forever. Why? Because this is part of the concept. If we want to control Sunni states, we need the strongest military power in that area controlled by us. So the questions regarding Syria is not about the Iranian existence, it's about what will be the Iranian military quality of those forces. And actually what we are doing in the last 4 years is trying to make sure that Iran will not be able to conduct Hezbollah #2, meaning inside Syria, those Shiite militias, around 2 divisions, will not get advanced ammunition system. And actually what we are doing, based on very good intelligence, whenever we have that intelligence, we attack those targets, destroy them, and by that, we do not let the Iranian militia forces to become Hezbollah #2. By the way, and it's not an anecdote, how those Shiite militias get into Syria, who they are. Surprisingly enough, they are not Iranians. They are Shiite people from Afghanistan and Pakistan that came to Iran, and the Iranian told them the following: let's make a deal. Be part of our Shiite militias and fight for us for 3 years, and then you can stay with your families in Iran. Remember, Afghanistan and Pakistan, those are 2 Sunni states that they have Shiite minorities. Those Shiite people left Afghanistan and Iran and Pakistan and moved to Iran. And the Iranian use it in order to have those fighters in Syria in order to control Syria. How it's connected to Israel? If you go into the Iranian perspective, in order to control the Muslim world, they use Israel as an excuse. How do they do it? In a very simple way. they keep telling to the Sunnis people, you, the Sunnis, tried to destroy the state of Israel many times. 48, 56, 67, 73, all the big wars, and you failed. Now it's our shift. So you can trust us and you can follow us. As you can see, we develop nuclear capabilities and we control the Israeli borders. We control the border with Lebanon. We control the border with Syria in the Golan Heights. And we also have Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Why do we need it? That's the way we can threaten the state of Israel. That's the way we can show you, the Sunnis, that we, the Shiite, are going to complete the mission and destroy the state of Israel. So from the Iranian point of view, they use Israel as an excuse. They don't need the nuclear capabilities against Israel. So why do they need the nuclear? Because the Sunnis already have it. By whom? By Pakistan. So again, Iran used Israel as an excuse. They did it in 82 in order to establish Hezbollah, but the real reason was to control Lebanon. They controlled the Golan Heights and Gaza as part of the message to the Sunnis. We, the Shiite, are about to take Israel out of the region. And they use the nuclear program as an excuse against Israel. The problem is that we cannot take the chance. Therefore, we need to establish a concept saying the following. We will not let Iran to become a nuclear state, and it costs what it costs. We are not asking anyone to do the job for us. And when the time comes and we understand that this is the last minute, we will take care of the Iranian nuclear capabilities. Understanding the full picture, you can see that Israel cannot shape the Middle East. We do have our policy toward Lebanon. We do have our policy toward Syria and Iraq lately. And we do have our policy toward Iran in case of. But the real question, if you ask me, is what about the Saudis? Do the Saudis understand the picture? Do the Saudis understand that Israel is part of the menu, but Israel is not the main course? From the Iranian point of view, the Saudis are the main course. And this is the biggest question today. Do the Saudis understand the picture? Do the Saudis ready to fight? Do the Saudis capable to fight? And this is, at that stage, still open questions. Back to Israel. Russia become a player. We are trying to deconflict with them, but we need to understand the Russian interest in order to understand what are the options we have. So why Putin decided almost 10 years ago to be part of the civil war in Syria? Two reasons. One, he was looking for a port which he can use all year long. Remember, many of the Russian ports during the winter are fully frozen. If you really want to be a superpower, you need a port which you can use all years long. Remember, he had ports like that in Libya and lost them. He had ports like that in Egypt and lost them. And Syria was the last chance. So he came to Assad and told him the following: let's make a deal. I will come and help you in the civil war, and you lease me one of your ports for 50 years. And that was the case. The port of Tartus today is a pure Russian base. The port and the airport next to him. But this is only 50% of the Russian vision. What is the next 50%? It goes into energy. A moment of a global view. From Putin's point of view, he was looking for something that if he can use it, it will be able to shape the European state policies. What was that issue? Energy. He said to himself the following: if I can control 60% from the European state energy needs, I can squeeze them. How can I reach that point? I need to control the Iranian energy. Remember, Iran has a lot of energy, but because of all the agreements, they could not use it. When Russia was part of the 5 superpowers that signed the agreements with Iran, the energy issue was one of the Russian motivation to go through that agreement. What was Putin's vision? I will be the only one who can take the Iranian energy and export it to Europe. What do I need for that? I need an agreement with Iran. I have it. I need a port in Syria as an exit. I have it. What was the last obstacle? The last obstacle was ISIS. ISIS was standing in the northern part of Syria, the western part of Iraq, and in a way blocked the option to take that energy from Iran and deliver it to Syria and from Syria to Europe. Now, what was the American policy toward ISIS? We need to destroy them. And when we discuss with them about what will be the future of ISIS, I've told them to destroy ISIS from a military point of view, it's not such a big deal. But we need to ask ourselves who will come instead of ISIS. Because we all know that vacuum exists only in the scientists' experiments. In the real world, there is no vacuum. And they told us, we didn't consider yet who will come instead of ISIS. We came with an idea, maybe it's about time to establish the Kurdish state. The Kurds are the largest minority on earth, 42 million people. And they said, no, we cannot because of Turkey. Now, what I'm saying is that the American policy toward ISIS works against the American interests, both versus Iran and Russia. Because by destroying ISIS, Iran got the option to drive directly from Tehran to Damascus. And Russia got the option to take that energy and deliver it to Europe. What I'm saying is that we have too many players with different agendas, and therefore the situation is very complicated. And yet the question is what Israel can do. Because as I said, we cannot shape the Middle East. So number one, we need to be prepared. We need to have strong military capabilities. We need to have strong intelligence, and we need to be prepared. Because living in the Middle East, generally speaking, meaning that you never know what the next day may provide you. I will be more than happy to have questions regarding whatever you want, the Palestinians, Gaza, elections, you name it.
I will start, Nitzan, with the following. You said the Americans have interests in the Middle East, the Russians have interest in the Middle East, but they are not so similar. Yet we see that the Americans and the Russians don't clash in the Middle East. Could you explain that?
It's not the full picture. The Americans and the Russians are fighting through proxies. The American Air Force or the coalition Air Force are attacking groups supported by Russia. The Russian Air Force attack groups supported by the Americans. They are not fighting directly because they don't need to fight directly. They are fighting through proxies. If you ask me what are the American interests in the Middle East at that stage, I'm not so sure that they really have a clear agenda or policy regarding the Middle East.
So that's
And
why
and from that perspective, there is no much big differences between the Obama administration and Trump administration. They both believe that this, let's say, religious clash among the Muslims, it's something that the American cannot solve. And the days of American troops fighting in the Middle East in order to save someone, those days are over.
I see. Thank you. Another question. I would like to go back to the border, the Israeli-Lebanon border, and discuss the UN troops there. Could you elaborate a bit about them, about the agreements, about their role, and about the practical situation?
Yes, we went through a process. At the beginning, by the end of the Second Lebanon War, UNIFIL 2 came to the region and actually implement the UN resolution in a very good way. What was the resolution? To make it simple, to make sure that in the southern part of Lebanon, Hezbollah will not be able to rebuild his power. So UNIFIL 2 conduct that mission. What was the Hezbollah response? They called the commanders, the UNIFIL commanders, and told them, you do not understand the rule of the game. If you do what you are doing, we will fight against you. After 2 weeks, a Spanish patrol walked into one of the villages and blew up by booby traps conducted by Hezbollah. 5 soldiers had been killed. 2 weeks after that, another patrol was ambushed, no casualties, but that was the end of the UNIFIL 2 effective step on the ground. Since then, UNIFIL actually do something very, very important. Look and cook. That's what they do. Look what's going around, write reports, and cook very good meals. Beside that, they do not implement the 1701 UN resolution. So UNIFIL 2 is not effective at that stage. And yet, we prefer that they will stay in the region than nobody will try to control what Hezbollah is doing over there. But UNIFIL is not implement his mission, unfortunately.
Somebody is asking, the previous war of Israel against Hezbollah has not ended very successfully for Israel. Why does Israel think this time will be better?
First, I need to fix that assumption. How do you judge if a war was successful or not? You need to have a perspective. We have the quietest border along the Israeli borders since 2006. I was at that time a deputy division commander, and the mission we got from the cabinet was to create a new deterrence between Israel and Hezbollah. If you judge that element, that was the successful war in the Israeli wars ever. Let's take the 67 war. Upon all the books we study, it was a very successful war. We succeed within 6 days to defeat Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. How long take them to open another war against Israel in 73? 6 years. And if you compare that element between us and Hezbollah, more than 14 years, that border is quiet. So it was a successful war related to the mission we conduct, created a nice level of deterrence. Is this enough? The answer is no, because deterrence is something very tricky. When it's not longer relevant, it's too late. So we need to keep that deterrence. And I believe that Hezbollah still deterred by us. Is this forever? The answer is no. And we believe that we study few lessons learned, we develop our capabilities. I cannot touch the details. I'm still in the Israeli reserve in very high position, so I know the plans very well. I believe that Israel can destroy Hezbollah military capabilities. So by the end of that conflict, Hezbollah will not exist as a military player. And that will affect all the region.
What do you mean it will affect the region if Hezbollah does not exist anymore?
Hezbollah, from the military point of view, he is the one that supports the Shiite militias in Syria. He is the one who is standing behind the Shiite militias in Iraq. And he is the one who's standing behind the Houthis in Yemen. Taking Hezbollah out of the game, which is the largest and the successful Iranian project, will shake all the Iranian concept, how to control Sunni states.
I see. As you probably know, Hezbollah is considered in the Netherlands a terrorist organization, and recently Germany has done the same, and now there are talks about doing something similar with the whole European Union.
Yes.
Two questions about it. Could you elaborate about the status of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization and what that means? And secondly, do you think these political acts have influence on the situation and position of Hezbollah in Lebanon itself?
From the Hezbollah point of view, when you need to run an organization like that, you need money. You pay salaries. You have to pay the families that lost their lovers during the combat in Syria. You need a lot of money in order to have that structure. And Hezbollah moved from a small terrorist organization into a semi-military organization, meaning he has battalions, he has brigade, he has headquarters. He needs a lot of money. Where that money comes from? They used to have two main sources, Iran, and some money come from drug issues. Upon all the sanctions on Iran, the source of money from Iran become very problematic for them. So now they increase dramatically the drugs market income in order to have the money they need. When you declare Hezbollah as a terror organization and you follow all the orders, the UN orders, as well as the American orders, all the finance issues become a very effective tool to push Hezbollah into the corner, because they cannot transfer money. They cannot use the bank system. This is one of the main problems Hezbollah has today. And if you look into what's going inside Lebanon, one of the side effects of the Hezbollah economical problems is the instability inside Lebanon. So declaring Hezbollah as a terror organization will help all of us to fight the finance issues and by that weaknesses Hezbollah.
I see.
This is the most important part at that stage.
And do you notice any changes since the declaration of Germany of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization?
Yes, three main effects. They need to evacuate their own people from Europe. We can see people coming back to Lebanon, or people change locations, because if you are in Germany or in Netherlands and they will cut you, you go into a court and then to a jail. So they are moving. Number two, they are looking for alternative, how to run the money. Basically, they are trying to go into the Bitcoin, all the money that is virtual money instead of cash. And last but not least, they try to go undercover, which will create another layer of complexity for us, but we will find them.
I'm trying to make some structure in the questions, but this is very difficult, but I still will try. Some people ask, why has Israel not destroyed Hezbollah as yet? This is one question. And second, do you expect Hezbollah to attack Israel from Syria rather than from Lebanon?
First, I believe that Hezbollah will make a mistake and attack Israel. Why? Because if you don't attack Israel, who needs you? If you sit and do nothing more than 12 years, who needs you? So they will do something. They are trying very hard to use the Golan Heights as a platform to attack Israel.
This is the Syrian border.
Yes, the Syrian border. If you go into the last 2-3 years, you will see some Israeli attacks against Hezbollah target in Syria. Leaders, commanders, they try to build up the option to attack from the Syrian border. By mistake, they believe that if they do it from there, we will not respond in Lebanon. They do not understand the Israeli policy. The Israeli policy is cut and clear. Whenever Hezbollah attack us, we will take the opportunity and destroy Hezbollah. The reason we didn't do it before that is very simple. Israel will not be the first to open war. If you take the Israeli-Hezbollah case study into any military academy, they will tell you that Israel should attack Hezbollah yesterday. And yet, Israel will not be the first to open war. Many reasons. We know the price of the war. We prefer to delay wars. But if they provide us a good excuse, we'll take it.
And what will be the price of the war?
Very high.
Yes.
Very high. We know that Hezbollah will try to use the rockets he has. As I said, 150,000 rockets. So the Israeli home front will be heavily attacked by them, as well as all the villages along the border. And we have our own concept how to defend the Israelis. I'm sure that you know that in every Israeli house we have a safe room, we have the Iron Dome system, we have the siren system. We believe that we can minimize the number of the casualties, and yet the picture of collapsed building will be all over.
But it is also going to be a very high price for Lebanon.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Because,
no doubt.
Yeah.
We need to understand that Hezbollah works from the civilian neighborhoods. A village in the southern part of Lebanon looks like a Hezbollah military post. In any village, there are observation points, storages, launchers, anti-tank positions, command and control room. All those list of targets are pure military targets that by the international law are accepted to be attacked by us. So we will ask the people to leave the area. We will ask them.
Excuse me, and you're saying that all these installations are situated within villages, within civilian buildings?
Of course. It's very simple. If I belong to Hezbollah, I'm coming to you, you have a house, I'm asking your basement to storage artillery or rockets, you have no other choice rather than give it to me. Otherwise, I will kill you. And that's the way Hezbollah controls all those villages.
So when if there is an Israeli attack, you expect to have a huge gulf of refugees from the South Lebanon.
In order to minimize the casualties, the innocent people, we will ask them to leave the area. And they will move to the north, either to the Bekaa Valley or to the area of Beirut. So it will be much easier for us to attack those locations.
Yes, yeah. What I'm going to is, which means that Lebanon, which already has about 4 million refugees from Syria and Palestinians, will have internal refugees as well, and they will probably move north and will try to get to Europe, right? Do you expect that? Is this in the scenarios? Do you have any?
Some European states are speaking with us about evacuation of their citizens from Lebanon in case of a war. I don't think that a pure Lebanese without a dual citizenship will be able to leave Lebanon.
So this is going to be a huge disaster with so many displaced persons and internal refugees.
It will be an issue. We believe that that issue should push the Lebanese government to be more responsible. The problem is that the Lebanese government is not responsibly enough.
It's very weak.
It's very weak, and they are not confronting Hezbollah. They, in a way, let Hezbollah to control them.
I see. What about the direct interest of Russia in gas and oil in the area of Deir el-Zor, the Euphrates Valley, which means Iraq, in fact? We were only talking about interests in Iranian energy.
Iraq can export their energy by themselves. They do not need Russia. So the Russian maybe will be happy to have part of it, but it's not crucial Iraqi needs. Iraq can export their energy by themselves. They don't have any embargo like Iran, so they don't need Russia.
Well, I have some other questions. I'm trying to make some sense of the questions in some structure. There are questions about some other countries. Could you elaborate a bit about the situation in Jordan in relation to Hezbollah, in relation to the conflict and to refugees, of course? And do you expect that ISIS is still threatening Israel one way or another?
Okay, let's start with Jordan. If we understand the Iranian vision, regarding the questions who is next on line, Jordan is next on line. From the Iranian point of view, taking Jordan is the next state which they are looking for. Why? Back to the Iranian concept, they are looking for a weak regime. They believe that the king is very weak. They are looking for a civil war. There is no civil war inside Jordan, but because of the refugees that run away from Iraq or from Syria, it's very easy to create a chaos. And yes, there are not enough Shia people in Jordan, but it was the same thing in Syria. So Iran can bring Shia people into Jordan. I'm not speaking about tomorrow morning. The Iranian vision is that Jordan is next on line. From the Israeli perspective, it's not acceptable. We cannot accept another border controlled by Iran. Now, let's split between political issues and security issues. From the security point of view, the Israeli-Jordanian cooperation is very good, better than you can think. The king still sits on his chair because of us. So the Israeli policy is to do everything we can in order to keep the king on his chair and to make sure that Jordan will stay stable. From the political side, as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have some issues. So it's too soon to say what will be the outcome of that process, but from the Israeli perspective, from the security point of view, the stability of Jordan is very important. At that stage, the king strong enough to control Jordan. Is this forever? I don't know. It's too soon to say. Regarding ISIS, we need to understand that ISIS is not just a group of fighters. ISIS is a concept, a religious concept. And that concept still exists. By killing the ISIS fighters, you do not destroy the idea. And ISIS exists in Syria, ISIS exists in Sinai, ISIS moved to the Philippines, and they still try to show that they exist. They are not strong as they used to be. They are not effective as they used to be, but ISIS is still alive. And from the Israeli perspective, let's face it, they never threaten us. ISIS was not a problem that directed Israel. They never attacked us. They did a mistake in the Syrian border. We killed a few of them, and that's it.
And in Sinai.
Sinai, but again, not against Israel, against the Egyptians. ISIS believe that fighting with Israel, it's not a good idea. I'm not saying that we like them, because we don't. I'm not saying that we believe that they are doing something good, because they don't. But ISIS do not threat the state of Israel.
Regarding the Shiite again, do you see any signs of Iranians trying to convince Palestinians to become Shiite? Or do you only see the political influence of Iran by, for example, supporting Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and other groups?
Generally speaking, the Palestinians are Sunnis. And the Iranians are not trying to convert them. They kept the point of weaknesses, which is money, and by that create a huge influence. The only place in the Middle East which you can see cooperation between Sunnis and Shiites is the Gaza area. In all other places, they are killing each other. The only place which you can see a cooperation between Sunnis, the Palestinians, and Shiites, Hezbollah and Iran, is in the area of Gaza. Why? Because they consider Israel as a common enemy.
Okay. If Hezbollah will be kicked out of Lebanon, who will take the power over in Lebanon? And what would that mean for the Israeli situation?
We believe, and I hope that I'm not a naive, that the Lebanese military forces that are actually trained by the Americans, they will stay out of the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, as they did in the Second Lebanon War. So they can come and take over Lebanon and bring Lebanon back to the Lebanese. Therefore, when the European state or the Americans ask us, do we care about what they do with the Lebanese military forces? The Israeli answer is no. You can do whatever you want. My recommendation to you is, above all, teach them what does it mean to be a national military forces. Because the Lebanese military forces never act like a national military forces. They were always loyal to the local leaders or to the religious. And now, first time ever, they have a chance to build up themselves as a national military forces. And if they stay out of the conflict between us and Hezbollah, because we are not running after them, we are running after Hezbollah, they can come, take over Lebanon, and bring Lebanon back to the Lebanese.
I see. Some questions about Iran. Iran itself. Do you think Israel is capable of destroying Iran's nuclear power? Do you think Israel is capable of attacking Iran? And do you think Israel is in Israel's interest to attack Iran?
The Israeli interest is to make sure that Iran will not get the nuclear capabilities. This is our interest. And we build up ourselves to make sure that we'll be able to take care of it when the time comes. By the way, we do it for almost more than 20 years by the silent campaign, taking the scientists out of the game, using some cyber attack, doing some other things in order to make sure that that machine will not be able to produce the nuclear capabilities. But if they do, Israel will take actions. We don't want to occupy Iran. We don't need to fight against all the Iranians. All you have to do is to destroy the main structure that related to the nuclear program. And I believe that we can do it.
Could you elaborate a little bit about Hezbollah's operation outside the Middle East and Europe?
Yes, Hezbollah, as the Iranian proxy, operates, as I said, in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. This is the east side. Regarding Europe, they use Europe for, generally speaking, two reasons. Build up the option to attack targets in Europe, either Israeli, Jewish, Americans, Iranian enemies. Build up the option to have wide net of fighters who can conduct those operations to implement the Iranian interest. This is number one. Number two is to be part of a chain of the drugs issues because they need money. Hezbollah control today something like 75% of the overall South America drugs market.
75%, you said?
Yes, yes.
3/4?
Yes. And they need markets to sell it. Europe is one of them. They take it from South America to West Africa, and from West Africa to Europe. And this is the Hezbollah players who do all those actions. So Hezbollah is a place to use from the operational point of view, as well as a source of money.
I see, as a criminal player.
Yeah.
I think we are almost at the end. I want to add ask one last question, and this is regarding the third big world power, is China. You did not mention China at all in this game. Is China not a player at all?
In order to understand China, we need to ask ourselves, what is the Chinese policy all over the globe? Generally speaking, two legs. Lately, they came with a concept saying the following: if we, the Chinese, can control the major ports, we can control the major trade all over the globe. And if you look into the major Chinese projects, it's about ports. They buy ports, they build ports, they want to control the trade over the sea. This is one leg. The second leg goes into the huge project, One Belt, One Road, which will be able to connect China into Middle East as well as Europe. Meaning whenever they see economical huge project that can promote their economical status, they will be there. They do not care about the regimes. They do not care about politics. They do not care about people. They care how they can increase their economical influence all over the globe. They did a very good job in Africa by buying many mines, by having a lot of infrastructure controlled by them, and now they are trying to control the worldwide trade. Those who believe that China will come to Syria in order to rebuild Syria do not understand the Chinese. They will come to Syria only if they see that they can control large part of the economical flow in this region. So
but at the moment, they sort of wait to see some stability in order to start any project at all.
At that time, they participate in very small project just to stay in touch in the region. They don't have any large project in Syria or Iraq. They have a lot of money. They are looking for opportunities, but their vision is economical, not a political.
And that's the reason why we don't see them in Lebanon or in Syria at the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
And if they dare, it's in a very small scale. Very small scale.
But they will not interfere in the fight between Russia, America, Iran, whoever.
No.
I see. Okay, before we finish, Nitzan, do you think there is anything you would like to add to draw an even bigger picture of the story? Or because I have a feeling we can talk still for hours, but we have to finish. So I wonder if there is anything you want to elaborate about before.
A moment of optimism. We are living in a period which there are 4 major issues that can change the picture. One of them was the Israeli elections. We have a new government, a new coalition. I don't want to get into the Israeli politics, but maybe we have some new opportunities. The second issue is the question, who is going to replace Abu Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority? Maybe we will have a new opportunities. The 3 issues is what will be the overall outcome of the bad situation of Iran. The coronavirus, the economical sanctions, some bubbles coming from bottom up. Maybe we are about to see a small change. And if you add into it the military clash between the Americans and the Iranians, which can take place any moment in the Gulf area, this is another element that can change the Middle East. And last but not least, the US elections. So we have 4 major issues that within 6 months from now can create some new options that will open new opportunities. This is a moment of optimism in a very tough neighborhood.
So what you're saying, the future still has some surprises for us all.
Of course.
Are you optimistic about better life for most people in the Middle East and in Israel, of course, in particular?
The answer is yes. I'm very optimistic. You cannot raise a family in Israel if you're not an optimist. I believe that the new generations in many Muslim states will open their eyes and realize that it's better to cooperate with us than fight with us. It is a process. Unfortunately, at the same time, we have the incitement, we have the radicalism, but I believe that the major population, the young generation will realize that it's better to cooperate with us than to fight with us, and it will open new options.
Amen.
And yet we need to prepare, and yet we need to stay ready, and we need to stay strong, because in the Middle East, if you are not strong, you will not exist.
I see. Well, with these optimistic words, I want to thank you very much for a fascinating lecture, Nitzan. I want to thank everybody for for joining us tonight. And I want to invite you to follow our website to see more of our planning. Next week, we'll have a discussion about Iran, especially about Iran as a country, as a society. And there are many more lectures to come. Nitzan, I want to thank you again very much, because the minute we close this Zoom, we are disconnected again. And I hope to see you with us in person one day when the skies open again. And I'm sure we will meet you again in Israel with the groups with which we will come to Israel after skies open again. Have a very nice evening.
Stay safe, stay healthy, and wish all the best for all of us. Thank you very much.